tonight, Bart Stevens, and he's here to talk about grief because we are doing a whole segment on men who have suffered grief, and men do a little bit differently than women. And we're going to talk to Bart about the loss of his beautiful, beautiful bride, Barb. And I've known Barb for about 10 years because she talks to me from the other side. So I know Barb too, but I didn't meet her when she was here. I met her after she passed over. Bart Stevens is a wonderful, accomplished man who works with special needs trusts and helps people all day long, but was in this magnificently wonderful marriage ever since he was a kid, right?
Oh, yeah.
You were married when you were a kid.
How long were you married?
33 years.
That's Pat and I this year.
Yeah,
Oh,
33.
congratulations. Yeah.
So, can you just kind of walk us a little bit through Barb started with breast cancer, right, Bart? And she actually wrote a book. What's the name of the book?
The book is called Not Just One in Eight, and it was published in 2000. It's stories of breast cancer survivors. And what Barb did, she interviewed close to 200 people. 75 of them were breast cancer survivors, and believe it or not, about 3 or 4 of them were men, and one was a married couple. And she interviewed them about their experience, and then talked to their coworkers, their spouses, their family members, friends, on how they coped with the situation and how they dealt with someone in the center of all that. And it was published. It was published in 2000.
Yeah, so Barb was turning her karma into dharma. We've talked about that a lot. When you go through something, you want to help other people understand it and go through it with the kind of grace that I understand that Barb went through it with a lot of grace, and that's what Bart's doing here on our show today, is also trying to help all of us understand what it feels like to lose a significant other. So how long was she in remission before she had a manifestation of cancer
Well,
again?
the breast cancer was in 1993. She had a bilateral mastectomy. Recovered, did not do chemo or radiation. Had basically a complete recovery. Did reconstructive surgery, which was her decision to do. And in 2005, unbeknownst to me, she started taking some falls. And then what happened was we had moved into a new house on a Friday, and on Sunday she could not get out of bed, and left side of her body was paralyzed, and of course got her to the hospital, and they did the tests and diagnosed that she had brain cancer, and she had the most aggressive that you can. It's called glioblastoma, which has a prognosis of survival of about 10 or 11 months. You can maybe 1 to 2 years, but Barb survived 11 months.
That was great.
So we knew.
So what do you do with that kind of news, Bart? Like,
well, you're in shock. I mean, you don't really accept it. And granted, we were in our 50s already, so we had been through life a little bit. It wasn't like we were in our 20s. We weren't in denial. What we actually did was we had made a decision that we were not going to let the disease control the rest of our life and the rest of the time we had. We were going to work around it. And so the first 2 months were rough because she had surgery. She was in rehab. And then we had what the doctors called the honeymoon period, which was where she was just thriving. And what happened was she had a cyst removed. The brain tumor was removed and a cyst grew back. So it was controlled with medication. And as long as we kept it under control and size-wise, she functioned normally. But when it got a little out of control, then what we had to do was adjust the medication and she would lose some of her abilities. So we had from about September through around the end of February, she was doing really well. She actually took a trip back east to see family on her own. We did a little weekend trip to Vegas, and then I remember the last dinner we went out to was up in Cave Creek, and we came out of the restaurant in February, and it was snowing, and it was just really nice. And then she started to decline, and then spent the last 6 weeks at home and passed away on May 22nd of 2006.
Did you talk to your friends and family about what was going on at the time?
Oh, we were completely open with everybody. There was none of this, keep it quiet, protect Barb. We were both very open about it, discussed what was going on with everyone. As a matter of fact, everybody else was having a problem. For the most part, we were more or less uplifting everybody else, keeping their spirits up. So she was amazing from that standpoint. A very positive person. It was never felt sorry for herself, never why us or anything like that. excuse me, like that.
Well, she, she's amazing when she comes from the other side. She's always, what's interesting is that she's right in Bart's business all the time. If he's gone to the dentist, she tells me. If he's got a new client, she gives me the client's name.
Tell the battery in the car thing.
You tell it. You tell it.
About 2 months ago, session with Melinda, Barb says, talk about under the hood of the car. So I'm going, all right, whatever. So I didn't think anything of it. She says, don't park under a tree. Well, that night I went out to dinner with friends, and I parked under a tree, and I came out, and I have a convertible, so the roof of the car wouldn't come up. And I figured, all right, so there was the problem. Well, that wasn't the problem, because about 2 months later, I got back from vacation, and I got in the car, and the battery was dead. So we were just laughing about the fact that we were warning of this, and this happens all the time. So
she says things and tells him things that are hilarious. His father's on the other side too. His mother's still on the planet, but his father's on the other side. Your mom's getting up there, right?
Just turned 91.
Yeah, 91.
So I joke with my father about the fact that I'm stuck here with Mom and he's got Bart.
and his father will also tell us things too, and it's really amazing. One of the reasons that I wanted to talk to men about grief is because, actually men's brains and women's brains actually function differently, and men compartmentalize, I guess, better or more. And men have this to-do energy. They want to do something about it. And you're in a situation where you could do nothing about it.
And men are totally fixers, and if you can't fix something, going through it is very difficult and very unsettling.
It's very frustrating. You feel totally helpless, but you don't want to give into it. And, you have to deal with the reality of if they tell you that it's terminal, sure, you want to have hope that Bart will be the exception, but then you have to be realistic about things too. And she was amazing because I still have them. I have 3 binders, 3 ring binders filled with information that she filled out. Everything from how to run the washer and the dryer to all the little incidentals, all the warranties.
Making sure you can take care of yourself.
Let me tell you, when she passed for that first year, it was a godsend because I don't want to tell you how many times I went into that.
So she left you life instructions.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. That is so cool. Amazing.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, yeah, we talked about all this stuff, and she really took care of me from that standpoint, and it really made a difference.
Now, really Bart, you guys were a childless couple. You didn't have kids. And from my experience as a counselor, I find that couples that do not have kids actually are closer as couples because, there's nothing that, interferes with the main relationship or other energies to take care of or so on. But I also think that maybe when you are a couple that doesn't have kids and then one of the, couples, one of the partners leave like that you don't have that second generation turn around and lean on.
It's very different. For me, I can't relate to somebody that's had kids, but for me, I feel like literally a piece of my body was cut out. I feel like not a whole person because we were not only very close friends and married, but we also were in business together. So we were 24/7. And then there were those weekends where we told everybody we were busy and just, by ourselves. So from that standpoint, it's a tremendous loss, and it's a very, very difficult adjustment. But you don't have a choice. You could either curl up and give in and feel sorry for yourself, or you adapt to the situation.
Did you ever feel sorry for yourself?
No, I really did. It was really. I'm sorry.
I was going to say no, because you became a caretaker once Barb passed. How was that for you?
That was where it really got to be rough. For the 11 months Barb was ill, I focused on Barb and caring for her in the last 6 weeks at home, and I was doing a lot of the physical lifting and whatever. And knowing that it was coming, etc., still keeping so busy and whatever. And to kind of jump back about a week before she passed, she said to me, "I'm ready." And that's when we had friends and family and people came in, and then the last friends came back from vacation in Buenos Aires. They arrived on a Thursday, saw Barb, and the next night she went into a semi-coma and passed away 2 days later. So it was a very, if you want to say this, was a very peaceful and beautiful passing because it was under her terms.
Right.
And then that was on Sunday, May 22nd. The following Sunday was my parents' 60th wedding anniversary party, which Barb made them swear and promise not cancel.
Yeah.
And of course I had to go. I lasted about 15 minutes and I got out of there.
Yeah.
3 days after that, my father has a massive stroke.
Mm.
Okay. The week after that, then that's when my body collapsed. My sciatica went out. I was in bed for like 6 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew where it was coming from. I knew where it was manifesting itself, so I knew I had to deal with it. But what was interesting is I wasn't expecting the psychological effect.
Mm-hmm.
And what was interesting is, knowing where it was coming from, I was able to deal with it because I recognized what it was. And what it was claustrophobia, where I had to open up the windows in the house. And I was feeling just weird feelings about things. And then about 3 or 4 months, and this went on for a while, and about 3 months after Bart passed, I decided to get out of town. I went to Hawaii, and I lasted in Hawaii for 36 hours. And, I went to a restaurant the first night, and here I'm sitting on a beach in a restaurant with all these couples and families, and here I am by myself, and it's just like, what the hell are you doing?
So you turned around and came home.
Yeah, but I went there for a purpose because I took some of her ashes
Did
with
you?
me. So I'm on the beach at 2 o'clock in the morning, and I didn't even realize I have a giant turtle next to me here. I've got the ashes. I'm sitting there. I'm crying. I'm feeling like crap. Spread the ashes, did my thing, went back to the hotel, called the airline. I was on a plane. Same flight attendant on the way over.
Really?
Yes. So she's, what are you doing here? And I explained what was going on. But for that period, I would say for the 18 months after she passed, even though we knew it was coming, you never know how it is. And, I was worthless at work, but I managed to do things. And you adapt and just adjusting the things. But that was a rough period. I remember my friend Mark and I went for my 60th birthday to Vegas a year after Bart passed, and I lasted there one night. I had him up at 6:30 in the morning going to the airport.
Gotta go away.
So that was rough, and I was getting anxiety attacks, at different places, and that was pretty rough, and it lasted about 18 months. However, I was going back east to visit family, and I have a niece and nephew there, and going back there was good for me, and I really enjoyed being with them. And then they moved overseas. They got an assignment to.
That's Barb's niece.
Barb's niece,
and I only mention that because she looks like Barb.
Oh, yeah.
She could be Barb's child. She looks like Barb, and she has a child that she had after Barb went to heaven that looks just like Barb. So that Bart has made that good connection.
It's a real bond. Yeah, it's a very close bond, and her husband's an amazing young man. And so the four of us get along great, and they've been overseas now for 7 years. So I've been fortunate enough to make a number of trips over to Europe and to visit with them, and I just got back a couple of weeks ago for one. So we travel around to different countries and have a great time together. So that's been really helped me tremendously as far as adjusting. And traveling now I can do without a problem. I've done some trips on my own.
You have gone to Hawaii.
Times,
by the way, everybody, if you have a question for Bart, he is happy to answer your questions at 602-875-0444. 602-875-0444.
Bart, going back to after Barb passed, shortly thereafter, what did you do to try to take care of yourself? I mean, you've been a caretaker. All of a sudden, you were alone.
Very interesting you said that, because I didn't take care of myself at all. It was really an I didn't give a damn attitude. As a matter of fact, let's see, for the 5 years, I mean, I was eating junk. I didn't care about anything. I wasn't exercising. It was just a matter of, I'm going to do whatever I want to do.
And she was on your case.
And my rationalization was, well, I don't have Barb here with me. I don't have many pleasures in life. I'm not dating. I'm not going out. The heck with it. I'll do my, as Melinda knows, I'm a chocoholic.
She was on his case, though. She would be
time.
On his case. When he would come in, she would be, are you eating right? Are you,
How long after Barb passed did you see Melinda?
I met Melinda about 2 years afterwards. Actually, I went to another meeting in Sedona that Barb and I had gone to when her father passed, and then somebody gave me Melinda's name, raved about her, lied. But I went to her anyway, and it's been, what, 8, 9 years? Something like that? Getting back to what you brought up, 5 years after Barb passed, I went to the doctor for a regular checkup. And he immediately said to me, you're going to a cardiologist. And the cardiologist immediately says, you're going to take an atomic EKG. And he says, you need a quad bypass. And I said, well, look, I said, I'm meeting my niece and nephew in Vegas in 4 weeks. Can I come in August? He said, no, because you won't be alive. So I had a quad bypass 6 years ago. I went in on Thursday. I was home on Sunday, back in work a week later. And my attitude was, if I didn't make it, I'm with Barb. And if I do make it, I'm still here. So things worked out, and I wasn't meant to go.
It was a win-win for you.
It was a win-win.
That was actually your attitude. I remember that. He was like, it's a win-win. If I make it, okay, I've got to stay here. If I don't, hey, I'm going to be met by an angel. So.
But now I take care of it.
But in the beginning, because a lot of times whenever you're going through anything with hospice, they'll say going to bereavement or grief workshops or gatherings and so forth. Did you ever try any of that?
No, and I'll say this: I'm a little bit of a different bird when it comes to things, and I'm not one for groups. And even though I may be wrong in saying this, I didn't want to sit with a group of people that suffered a loss and and more or less coming down. And I didn't want to hear other people's stories. Not to be selfish, I just didn't.
No, but that's the difference between men and women. Yeah. Because if you go to one of those groups and there's 15 people in the room, 12 of them are going to be women, and and I hate to say this, and the 3 guys that are in the room are scoping it out for their next wife because actually you're the exception to the rule. Most people who've had a happy marriage and lose a spouse to death want to be married again because they do miss all of that connection, camaraderie, and so you're the exception on that.
And the reason for that is very simple. I feel as married today as I did the day I said I do, and when Bart passed, it's no different. You know how it is around here.
I know how it is.
So in that sense, I actually did go on a few dates about a year and a half afterwards, and friends pressuring for a period of about a year, and I felt like I was cheating.
Did you ever talk to anybody about what was going on? Anything about your grief, or did you just hold it all in?
You know what? I didn't feel like I was holding it in. I just didn't feel a need to have to discuss it. My friends who I saw regularly, we talked about Barb as if she was there. We go out to dinner, and it was like, here's the empty chair, and she's there. And even now, it was just on this trip with my niece and nephew. Another couple came with us, and it was like Barb was there because we would talk about Barb and just there. So again, as I say, I'm a little bit different that I didn't go through, I don't think, a typical grieving process, and I didn't feel a need to talk to people about it.
Well, let's talk about that for a minute because I happen to have a ringside seat. Okay.
Well, I should say I had you. Oh, there we go.
I happen to have a ringside seat, and in the beginning, Bart came more regularly to talk to Barb than he does now. He still comes now. He doesn't need me to talk to Barb. He talks to Barb all the time. But it's just fun. We make a connection. It's just fun. But in the beginning, you did shed tears. It was difficult in the beginning when you first made the connection. Now it's all about laughter and we have fun and all that. But one of the things you said to me when I asked you to be on the show was so profound, and that is that one of the messages you wanted to give the angels tonight was, if somebody has lost another person, talk about them. Don't avoid the subject. And that is what a lot of people do. They avoid talking about the loved one that's crossed over. And and that makes it very hard on the person that suffered the loss because it feels like they're invisible. So that's something you shared with me.
And one other thing also to add to that is, don't talk about if your loved one has cancer or died of cancer. Don't go telling the stories. Oh yeah, this one's brother had cancer and this one had cancer. We don't want to hear that. And it's with good intention. When Barb was ill during that period, people were doing that out of good intentions, and I would just tell them nicely, save those stories. We don't need to hear that. But it's
most people do not know how to connect with grief at all, because grieving is not part of our collective society. Even whenever we have somebody die, they kind of go away someplace else and die, and that's a big change. So you don't talk about it, or you have to have some sort of an aspect where you can say, well, I understand what you're going through, even though you really don't. Just because you know somebody with cancer or have a best friend that died of cancer or whatever does not mean that you know what it's going to lose a spouse. Very, very different.
And it's different to lose a child, and
Yeah.
all the different
Or a parent,
grieving
everything
processes
is
are different.
Let me share a story with you. You know what? We've talked about my friends Peter and Sheila.
Right.
You remember? Okay.
Yes.
These are friends of over 40 years. And the year Barb was diagnosed, she was diagnosed with throat cancer.
Mm-hmm.
She survived for 10 years. Went through hell.
Mm-hmm.
Husband, amazing guy. Took her, they in New Jersey. Took her to New York to doctors. Took great care of her. She passed away. It was March of last year, and he and I were talking a few weeks later, within 6 weeks, and he says, "I got to share something with me." He says, "I'm seeing a woman," and he said, "She's a past friend. Her husband died in December, and we just need each other's company." And I just said to him, I said, "Fantastic." I said, "You go for it. Don't worry about it." And now it's been over a year, and we just talked, and it's starting to become a more close relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And for him, God bless him, he loved his wife dearly. They were
Mm-hmm.
a great couple,
Mm-hmm.
but for him, he needs this.
Mm-hmm.
And he said to me, he says, "I didn't have a life for 10 years. And I said, "I understand." I said, "You go for it." And he's happy now, and I'm delighted. He just retired. So we all have to approach it differently.
Of
but
course.
I think one of the things also that I would say to everybody is go with yourself and don't let other people tell you how you should be.
Mm-hmm.
Go with your gut. Get out of your head. Go with what your gut tells you. My gut told me, I've adapted to my lifestyle. I spend a lot of time alone, but I'm fine. I'm fine. It's not like I'm never lonely.
Right.
So it's all by choice.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a key thing for people.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I know that Barb talks to you through Melinda. Does she ever talk to you through you?
All the time. All the time.
Early on or after visiting Melinda?
I'm just laughing at another story. I think the best way is to relate the story. Got home one day, just a few years ago, and I got up in the morning, take a shower in the cold water. All right, so I figured, oh great, the water heater's gone. So I go to the office, take care of it, come home, check it again. Water heaters, cold water. I go out, check the fuse boxes. No, I didn't check the fuse. Excuse me. Right away, I was wondering, okay, now I got to get a new water heater. So all of a sudden, I hear the voice literally saying, "Schmuck, check the fuse box."
Yeah.
I knew who it was.
Yep.
I went out, so help me, I checked the fuse box. The one switch was the water heater. But let's get this. I went out, I renewed the homeowner's warranty, which had expired.
Yes.
6 weeks later, guess what busted?
The water heater.
Bingo. So I could tell you story after story. So yeah, we talk about it.
How those signs happen.
Yeah.
It's never the first year that's the hardest. It's always the second.
Interesting you say that. Every year's tough.
Mm.
It doesn't really. You adapt. It doesn't get any better. You just simply handle it differently and a little better. And
Now I'm going to ask you a question. Because you didn't start, or you only dated a little bit, or didn't find somebody else to put in your life, I want to ask Melinda too. Has Barb ever said anything about that? But you talked about your friend that just got married, and he's got a different type of thing. Do you think that one is better than the other? Do you think that?
No, I think it's whatever is best for you. I think if you don't let other people pressure you. I only started dating because friends were pressuring. I had no interest whatsoever. The ladies I went out with, they were all very nice, but I had no interest whatsoever. There were a couple that were strange, but the friends would call me and say, "How did your date go?" I said, "You knew Barb. You knew the kind of woman." I was like, "What were you thinking?" But everybody was fine. And I'll say it was me. I mean, I just wasn't interested. There was one interesting comment that was made to one of the lady friend that set me up on a date, and she said the feedback she got was I was talking about Bart too much on the date, and she was 100% right. And I realized. But like I say, there's a lot of people that get into our age bracket, and the greatest fear is being alone. And
companionship. Most people need some sort of a companionship. Yes.
Again, it's more likely men that will remarry, more likely widowers will remarry than widows. But and honestly, Duffy, other women on the other side. In fact, I have a client that's getting married today, whose wife coordinated him meeting this person that he's marrying from the other side, and talked a great deal, and gave me her name and her dead husband's name before he even met her, and then he brought her to meet me, and then the two of them, her dead husband and his dead wife, were in the room together, and they were thrilled these two people were getting together. but Barb's never said anything like that whatsoever.
Okay.
In the beginning, first couple of years, it was kind of, you should go out and date, but I think she was saying it more for my sake of saying you should, whatever, realizing that it wasn't going to happen. And went through the routine. And,
They
and
have
it's
the
fine.
most interesting connection with each other because, I don't know, she'll say something that I think is strange, and I'll go, she's saying, what? And he'll go, oh, I know exactly what that means, you know? And he'll know exactly what she's talking about because they have private jokes and, you know, private things between them.
For 33 years.
So, it's interesting. It's a little different working with Barb and Bart than it is other people, frankly, which is one of the reasons I wanted Bart to be here.
We were told that we've had like 12 to 1,400 lives together.
Yeah.
So we knew that we were
really
connected.
Close soulmates. Yeah.
So she had just had her 11th heavenly birthday, correct?
11.
Yeah, so she just had her 11th heavenly birthday.
Yeah.
And, she just still yaks away about his business and...
Yeah, it's like she's here, except, you know.
She's not. But she is. You know, she's always with you. Especially if you hear her talking to you a lot. So.
Oh, absolutely. And, you know, it's even interesting because friends that were very close with her, she'll come to them in dreams. And so it
comes to you in your dreams also,
Actually, Bart has sent some of her friends in, and they've talked to her and that kind of thing.
It was interesting. They talk about a dream. I don't have a lot of dreams about Barbara because I think I'm not remembering them. But when shortly after she passed, I had a dream that was extremely vivid, and it was as vivid as Melinda sitting right here. And what we did is we started moving our fingers towards one another, and I woke up just before we touched fingers. And as at the time I was seeing the other medium, and I went up and told her about it. She said, if we had touched fingers, I would have joined you.
Oh.
And I said, well, gee, I wish I would have known it because at the time I would have grabbed her. You know, it was one of those things. I mean, it was quite an adjustment. It really was.
Do you find that other men you know that have lost their spouses react pretty much the same way you do?
No. I think everybody differently. I know it's a tendency a lot to that feeling of being alone and wanting to get connected with somebody. I know that you hear all these stories about people that within a couple of years after being widowed, they'll remarry. And I think another big difference too, which is interesting, is whether you are widowed or whether you were divorced. Because I noticed a very different attitude. And just a couple of women I went out with, the attitude of, you know, you felt the standoff like a wall up, like from divorced versus widowed. And I don't, you know, maybe that
different type of loss.
A different type of loss.
Absolutely.
But I think, you know, we all react differently.
Yeah. And, sometimes the divorce, they're downright excited and thrilled.
Because and you know what? One of the funny things is Barb and I never restricted each other from doing anything. If one of us wanted to do something, we supported, you know, and whatever. Except when I wanted to go on a glider playing with a friend, and she said no way. But stuff like that is okay. But so, you know, now living alone, I can get up and do whatever I want anytime I want. I can, you know, if I feel like that chocolate bar, I don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, but if you go down and start getting into a glider, she's going to talk in your ear.
You know what? I still wouldn't do it. And I have to tell you, Duffy, this is funny you say that, because there's still things in the house and things that I won't do because I know Bart doesn't like me doing it, and it would aggravate her. And even I know, she'll yell at me when I see Melinda.
Because she tattles to me. She tells me stuff that he does that she doesn't like. She tattles. So, you know, but a lot of time we talk about synchronicity and, you know, people, you know, coming in and out of each other's lives. You have synchronicity with the McMahons. How interesting, because...
Well, I was telling Pat, I was reminding him of it. Barb worked for K-Light Radio back in the early 80s, which was the other side, with the FM side of KTAR, and knew Pat from the station and from down there. And I was relating a funny story to him. I don't know if you want to tell you real fast. All right. And I didn't expect Pat to remember the story because of the 10 million people he's interviewed, but he had on Dr. Heimlich from the Heimlich maneuver. And to make a long story short, oh, you know what that is? That's the alarm on my clock to take medication. I shut off the phone, but pass it over here. I'll turn it off.
Is that Bart?
So, that's Bart reminding me to take my clock.
Barb's like, don't
Just throw that
Don't
out.
forget your medicine.
See, I can't get away from it. I cannot get away from it. Is
That's
that funny?
hilarious.
See, there it is. I didn't bring my pills with me, so don't worry about it. I'll just stick it under here. All right. So there you go.
Okay,
The mic
so
off.
interviewing Dr.
So,
Heimlich.
Pat's going to interview Dr. Heimlich of the Heimlich maneuver, and Dr. Heimlich comes into the studio and the station, and Barb immediately gets up and walks up to him and says, "Are you the Dr. Heimlich?" And he says, "Yes, I am." And she says, "Well, you were almost my father." He looks at her like, "What the hell?" And she said, she explained, Dr. Heimlich was dating a woman back in the 40s, and so was Barbara's dad. It was the same woman. And she and Barbara's dad gave her an ultimatum and said, it's either Heimlich or it's me. And she chose him, thank God, because Barbara wound up. So she was explaining that to Dr. Heimlich, his old girlfriend, and he, of course, remembered her, gave her a big hug. So it's kind of a cute story.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he just passed away within the last year or so.
Did he?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So, we talk a lot about humor and how humor raises us up to be able to get to the other side of the veil. That's one of the things that I think keeps us going is laughter and humor. And that's what I really respect about you, is that you seem to always make a joke and laugh, and you're always laughing and having a good time, and having a good time no matter what. And
that was what, Barb was fantastic that way, because we really did find the humor in the crazy things that were going on. Here was a incredibly stunning woman.
She was. I wish you had brought a picture of her.
Well, I've got a picture in
here. Let's
I don't know if you'll be able to see it.
Show everybody what Barb looks like, because she is just a knockout. Barb is.
And
absolutely
here
a
was this
knockout.
drop-dead gorgeous woman that gained 50 pounds and, of course, lost her hair and everything.
From the steroids. She
yeah,
gained 50
and her
pounds.
medication and everything.
Right,
And I remember one night we were going out to dinner, and she's standing in front of the mirror, and she's about 170 pounds. She says, "Oh, I look so fat and ugly." I said, "Hon," I said, "when I met you, you had an hourglass figure." I said, "Now it's about an hour and a half." But I said, "You still look great." So this is, she was 50 in that picture.
This is Barb. And she's here with us tonight, and she would be thrilled.
Oh, I could feel her smiling.
Yeah, she would be absolutely thrilled to talk about breast cancer awareness, because that was her, her gig was really about breast cancer. That book was very important to Barb, and oftentimes she will mention someone from the book that she's greeted on the other side, and that's part of what her job has been. She's told us and shared with us that on the other side she still works with breast cancer survivors, knowing that you survive breast cancer whether you're here or you're there, because there's life after life. And so she's been very instrumental in helping.
Writing the book was very cathartic for her. It was really good for her to go through that. It was something she wanted to do, and she really worked hard on it. And she was writing it. We were looking for publishers and got tons of rejections, of course, and back and forth. And I said, just keep writing it. And I said, if we don't get a publisher, we're going to self-publish it. And so with that, she knew it was going to come out. And then, I guess about 7-8 months beforehand, we heard from a woman in New York. She decided to become her agent to represent her, which we were shocked at. And she got the Chicken Soup people to publish the book.
Wonderful.
So we were thrilled with that. And just a quick story with that. When you write books like that, you don't expect to make a lot of money, of course. Right. She didn't do it for that reason. But the publishers told her, they said, why don't you book a book signing tour on the West Coast and just book the hotels, do about 6-7 stops, TV or whatever, and just set it up, and we'll cover it, whatever. And so Barbara, of course, turned to me. She said, "What do I do?" I said, "Just leave it to me." So we started in San Diego, went our way up to San Francisco, and did TV interviews, the 5-minute little things, and did book signings, and of course we stayed at great hotels, and we had an absolute ball. So that was kind of the reward of it, and she enjoyed that. But the book was very, very well received, and has really been helpful to them.
And still selling, yeah.
Still, yes. As a matter of fact, after 10 years, I got the first royalty check, and that was $5.88. and I got another check. I get a lot of minuses. They'll have the commission, and then they take off the expenses. But it doesn't matter. I'm thrilled people are getting the book, and I think it's great. So it's very cool.
Did you do any journaling after Bart passed?
No, I didn't. Not at all. It was I did just a lot of quiet. What I would do is I would just sit more or less like meditate, just quietly. Barb did a lot of journaling. I've got a bunch of her journals where she did a lot of meditation and stuff. One of the things she wants you to do is turn it into a book, which I've got to do these days.
Barb was a very spiritual human because, you know, she definitely took that being a spiritual being, having a human experience, quite literally is what she took it.
She would sit and meditate and write it out, and she would say she'd been talking to God, and then she would read it, and she would be hearing it for the first time as well. And if you knew Barb and the way she spoke and wrote, you knew that was not her writing. You know, it was someplace
inspirational.
Yeah. Amazing stuff.
So she was at home when she passed. Were you with her?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
A lot of people describe to me that when they're in the room with somebody that's passed away, how absolutely peaceful, beautiful, how you feel the angels around and so on. Did you feel that, Bart?
What we did a few weeks before, two of our friends came up to the house, and we did, I don't know which one to call it, but I don't want to call it a seance, but we did a meditation. And in the meditation, it was where I was lifting Barb and actually carrying her to this light. And the two women actually had to pull me out of the meditation, said you were going too far in. So that, with that, and then what happened was is she went into kind of a semi-coma about 2 days before she passed. And I remember she was in the bedroom, I was in the living room watching TV, and then I dozed off. I woke up about 1:30 in the morning. I walked in to check on her, and I heard the rattling, the breathing, and I had been experienced other people passing. And then I left the room, went back in the living room for a bit, covered her up, and then I went back in again, and she had passed. So that was a very peaceful. She was at home just the way she wanted. Excuse me. She said goodbye to everybody she wanted to, and it couldn't have been nicer. I mean, it was exactly what she wanted.
So the brain cancer didn't affect her cognitive ability.
The tumor originally affected her, and definitely her balance. And then after the surgery, where it was a large tumor, so what happened is cysts grew back. When the cysts got too big, it would put pressure on her brain, and that would affect her abilities, her cognitive abilities, speech and things. And then we would adjust the medication, and when we got the cyst to reduce, she'd be absolutely fine. Absolutely, like, you know, Bart.
You were a caretaker for such a long time. Do you ever talk to other men that are caretakers?
No, I haven't really, you know, within my friends, my acquaintances of people I know, nobody's gone through this. So there was nobody really to talk to about it. I didn't go to any grief groups or anything. So I basically did it solo. But I'll say this, we have friends that were amazing. We have friends that came to the house. Another interesting thing, in March of '05, just before Barb which was June, we went to this program that she dragged me to, which was one of these self-improvement programs. I don't know if you ever heard of Peak Potentials. Harv Eker? Okay. So she dragged me to LA for 3 days to go to this thing, which I fought the tooth and nail. This is like that guy Robbins and all these other guys. I don't need this Barb. You know, typical guy, right? So because Barb wanted to go, of course I went. Well, I was blown away. All right. And she fell in the street while we were walking. Kind of a sign. And then a couple of months later, I went with a business associate to another one, signed up for a bunch of the courses. And they were both physical challenges and both business things. And the first one, Barb and I were going to go to together. And I said, I'm not going. And she said, you've got to go. And this was like 2 months after surgery. This was in August. And I really didn't want to leave her. All the friends kicked in and said, well, we'll stay with her 24/7. You got to go because she wants you. And we had all these different physical challenges over a 5-day period. Stuff I never believed I would have ever done. And I said, there's no way in hell I'm going home and saying I didn't make it. So there was inspiration, and that kind of gave me a lot of inner strength there. Because I did things at age 59 that I didn't think I would be able to do.
She inspired you.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, one of the things I think about your marriage that was so special, and, you know, again, I've had this bird's eye view of watching you go through some stages here because, you know, you come. And, I mean, you can't work with somebody and somebody from the other side for 11 years and not become friends. I mean, Bart's come over to my house for Passover.
I told Melinda when Bart counsels her, she should give me the check for the services.
So, I mean, but one of the things that I've seen, not only since she's passed, but what I hear about her before, is what an inspirational human being she was, and that she was always somebody that inspired you to be, great. Like that line, and as good as it gets, you make me want to be a better man. Yeah. Like she was that girl.
I never would have accomplished anything that I've done without her. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. I can say that categorically. Where I was headed until I met her, I was not in a good course. Not a bad guy, not in trouble. Yeah. Well, to give you an example, I mean, first day of college, I flunked out, wound up spending 2 years in the military, what can I tell, came out, grew up a little bit, then fortunately met Bart, and that was it.
Melinda, you have interviewed other men that have lost their spouses. Mm-hmm. Tell me the differences. Some of the differences.
Well, I'll tell you that Bart is very clear on who he is and what he wants out of life. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's a difference. Even though I'm sure there was a feeling of being lost when Barb left, he wasn't lost. Case in point, the fact that she gave him a notebook and told him how to do everything like that. So Bart's always been directive with his grief, and had this ability to put it into a perspective of still making that connection. Mm-hmm. I don't know where that came from in your background, that strong faith in life on the other side. I'm not sure it came from your family background. I think it was something that Barb instilled in you during life, But they had a spiritual marriage, and she did do meditation, and Barb is nobody's fool. She knew that whether she survived breast cancer or not, she didn't look at that with rose-colored glasses. She knew the possibility. She'd been investigating breast cancer. She knew that the cancer can come back. She was prepared in her own being, is what she's told me. Right. When Barb appears to me, she always appears in a kind of a white, flowing dress. Mm-hmm. Always. When she lets me see her, she always appears in the same dress. It's very interesting. So,
but other men that you have counseled or read for and so forth, they don't have that same connection.
Well, I think that some of the men that I have as widowers certainly have had a strong connection with their spouse. But again, the more likely scenario for most men is to see if they can have another relationship or companionability in some form or fashion. It may not be the same great love. And there's all kinds of different types of love anyway. So, sure. That's usually what happens, is that
they're trying to find out if it's okay
to move forward in a different way. So the question is, will there be a reconnection in another life? That depends. So that depends on the karmic profile. Will Bart and Barb be reconnected in another life? I bet everything I own. I bet everything I own.
Unless they finish it this time, and they're going to stay on there together.
Yeah. But with other people and this kind of karmic profile, there was an agreement between Bart's spirit and Barb's spirit that this was going to happen. And I must tell you that Bart is my client that recommends people to come to a medium. I think he recommends the woman we're used to in Sedona too. But he recommends me and says, if you aren't satisfied, I'll pay you your money back. That's what he always says. Every time. So far, he hasn't had to put out any money.
It's only cost me a couple of $1,000. No. Everybody. I had one woman, the mother of my doctor, who came, and she called. She said, "How much information did you give Melinda before my son came in? Because she knew too much." And I thought that was the best kind of feedback she really had.
So Bart and and Barb had this agreement, and in part it may be because Bart has been, a mouthpiece for life after life, because he tells everybody, I talk to my wife, I go to a meeting, I'll go see her, go do that. And so he's been, kind of a catalyst for other people growing into understanding life after life, and that could be part of their karmic profile. I think that there may be lots of other personal reasons, but I think, that may be part of their karmic profile. So
I'm with you. There's no doubt that they will be together either in many more lifetimes or just together over there.
Well, you know what I honestly think? I don't think I've ever said this to Bart. Can I?
Absolutely. Nobody's listening.
I don't think that they'll ever come back to this planet again.
Yeah. That was my feeling.
I think this is their last incarnation on this planet, and that they don't have to come back to hell again.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I think. So, yeah.
We'll see. As long as we're together, it doesn't matter.
That's what I think. You do other things that I just wanted you to share a little bit, because you've got a very special job. You work with families who have special needs children. You work closely with SARP,
Right.
and you work with families who have special needs kids as far as autism or
Down syndrome, any type of developmental disability.
And so you've done this work for a long, long time. Can you just tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's real interesting. I was in the typical traditional financial planning field, and then talk about a midlife change. 24 years ago, I was approached by someone, a company I worked with, and said, we want you to take over and do special needs planning. And I said, what is special needs planning? Had no idea. And then looked into it, and I said to Barb, I found what I'm supposed to be doing. And this was at age 45. Of course, supporting each other. She was 110% behind it. Went through it. The company actually dropped the program after a year and a half. I started my own company, started developing it. She started working with me, and I started traveling throughout the United States, speaking at conferences, and then wrote the book, and it's been the most rewarding thing.
What is the name of your book, Bart?
The book is called The ABCs of Special Needs Planning Made Easy. I'm just finishing up the second edition, which will be a strictly virtual book on the website. But it's been great. I've been to national conferences. I've been as far as Taiwan, China to speak. Interesting culturally. They blame the mom for giving birth to an imperfect child.
Is that right?
Amazing cultural changes and things. Fascinating. But I'll tell you what, it's not in any way anything negative within the community. The kids are fantastic. The parents really step up. And it's been very, very, very rewarding. I love it.
Do you find it interesting that you and Barb could not have children, and yet you take care of all
Well,
these
let me
children?
clarify that we
chose
not to have children.
They chose not to have children.
That was a conscious decision. All the time we were dating for 4 years before we were married, we never talked about kids. We got married, we didn't talk about it. The first time it was brought up is when my grandfather said, when are you going to make me a great-grandfather? And we were married about 8 years and started talking, and I said, what do you want to do? And she said, the only reason I want to have a kid is to see what the experience is. Because we were really selfish with each other, and I admitted it. And so I said to her, you know what? I said, just in case something happens when we're young, and if you change your mind, I said, I'm going to get the vasectomy. I was 34, she was 31. I said, just in case, and you remarry in the future, you change your mind. At least, it's safe there. And never anything. Our dogs are our kids.
Yeah.
I don't have to tell you.
I got to tell you something, Bart. Bill and I have decided not to have kids, too.
Oh, I thought you had to get married.
That's okay. Pat and I couldn't have children.
You can adopt.
Well, Pat and I couldn't have children either, so I mother everybody.
That's what the nice thing is we were able to spoil everybody else, and just like with my niece and my great niece now, I could spoil.
Well, yeah, his great niece,
Almost like a grandfather too.
Oh, yeah.
He's like a grandfather, but he's Uncle Ringo.
Uncle Ringo. That's wonderful.
Yeah,
so, because we're talking about the difference between female grief, male grief, I have a question that I wondered through your years of working with people who've had children with special needs, if you see a difference between the way the male, the father, handles it and the way the mother, the female, handles it, and if you see a string of grief that goes through those families or not. I always thought that Down's children were God's chosen, but there's a lot of different levels of I don't know that much about it, Bart, but I know there's a lot of different
Within
levels.
the community, of course, it's going to be a shock when a family or parents get the diagnosis. Everybody wants a typical child. But the amazing thing is, I've got to tell you, is I would say 99.9% of the time, both parents step up and are amazing. Absolutely amazing. I was with a couple last night. They have an 8-year-old son with autism. He's nonverbal. He was bouncing off the walls. Dad's wrestling and playing with him. He came jumping on the couch. He's jumping on me. The dad jumped up. I said, "Nope, it's fine. I'm used to this." The people start. Yeah, there are the exceptions. There are the dads who wanted the son that's going to grow up and be the ball player, and the kid never looks dad in the eye, and it's a big ego thing with men, and some just can't deal with it.
Well, you work with Sark, so you know. I just went blank on her name. Oh my gosh.
Denise Resnick?
Denise.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. Well, her marriage was like that.
Okay? I didn't realize that for her, but look what she's accomplished and what she's done. But I've got a number of dads that are single parents, but Irma Bombeck wrote an article back in 1980 about how mothers of children with special needs are very specially blessed because they're the ones that don't take any crap. And a lot of the dads have stepped up. And I think a lot has to do with society because if you go back, I've been doing this 24 years, and it's been pretty much open. I've never met families that are embarrassed. But I can remember as a kid when I was in school, and the kids who had special needs. And parents didn't talk about it. And doctors would say, put them in an institution and forget about it. So there was a stigma going back a couple of generations. Today, it's not a stigma anymore.
We didn't really hear much about autism until the 80s.
Autism wasn't even first diagnosed until 1947. And now when I started doing planning 24 years ago, we were 1 in 350 births. Now it's down to 1 in 55.
Yeah, wow.
It's a increase in the techniques, I believe. Just with dealing with circuit, there's a lot of things going on.
They've also encompassed a lot of different modalities within the autism spectrum.
So. And and that's one of the interesting things too. You take a child with Down syndrome. These kids are full of life.
Oh,
they're the most amazing. I've spoken at the national conferences.
With love and
my God, they're amazing. You go to an autism event, and a lot of the kids are just nonverbal, not social, and you don't even see a lot there. And it's an interesting dynamic, so you can see how parents, depending on the type of disability, the severity, if the child is high functioning and can do things, because I always say to the families, let's focus on what the child's abilities are, and then fill in the gaps with it. So it's really a great community to work.
Well, to speak of karmic profile again for a minute, because it's all about what the spiritual choices are, and frankly, I think that maybe at a spiritual level we need to look at 1 in 55 kids now being diagnosed on the spectrum, and maybe that's because of the way of the planet and all of the new age of electronics and cell phones and all the stuff. I don't know. Maybe there's something that's happening in our evolutionary process that's part of it. I don't know. But the karmic profile of the families that have those kids and how well they do with special needs kids is absolutely shows strength of character and integrity and all of those things in that choice. But with your choice of not having children, what you and Barb did by getting involved in this community at age 45 has helped thousands and thousands of children. So you had many children.
Yes.
And the kids are absolutely phenomenal. As I say, it's not, people don't sit and cry and say, why me, or a burden or anything like that. A lot of them say, I wouldn't, they said, if I had a choice, of course I'd want to have a typical healthy child. But they said, I wouldn't change my child for anything because this is who they are. And it's amazing.
And if we choose our life, as I believe that we do, they choose to come in and go through this for a number of reasons for whatever their karmic profile is.
Right.
And so they learn to go through that, and they also, their parents, the other people around them, learn from them. So there's always, to me, a reason. Whether we want to accept it or not, there is.
I was once at a conference in Kentucky and met a gentleman who came up to my booth in coveralls, and we were talking. He says, I've got 10 children. He says, 6 of them have special needs.
Is that right?
And I said to him, I assume you adopted? He says, nope. He says, every one of them's biological. And I said, well, let me just ask you a personal question. I said, after the second one, didn't you learn your wife has any hesitancy? He said, no. He said, whatever God gave us, God gave us. We just took them. He says, and they're all doing great. We have a big farm, and it's great. And then you see these stories about families that adopt kids. I have a client who adopted 11 children, everyone with special needs. She did it when she was in her 50s. Her kids were grown. So it really is a very rewarding community. In many situations, what comes back is tenfold. It's great. I feel privileged working in it.
Well, I think that's been a career well spent.
Yeah.
So I do want to tell you that as we progress here on understanding men's grief, that next week we have a very special guest. His name is Chad Villaborghi. He has agreed to come speak to us about the suicide of his 13-year-old son and what that felt like as a father, and how he and his family have, I don't know if I want to say moved through it, but I guess they have, in a way in which he will share with us, or he'll help us understand some of grief from that perspective. So I'm really in honor of him coming to speak to us. And I just think that it's been just wonderful, Bart, for you to share with us about Barb. And, you know, your eyes always light up when you talk about Barb. And it's just always nice to see, you know, somebody that has been in such a loving relationship. I think that even that is like such a wonderful example to people that,
I'm a lucky
you know,
boy.
that
Thanks for having me.
You know,
it's been a lot of fun.
That love still stays connected.
And I think you finally found the tip.
Oh, well, he just
sure
coughed and left the room.
No, now that he's back, let's drop this over.
Okay, we'll stop talking about him now.
Okay.
So, yeah, so just a little bit of business before we go. Don't forget about the JVP event coming up at the Mauna Lucia. We're really selling those tickets, so make sure you get yours. And the Caribbean cruise, we had a wonderful, you guys, we went down to the Craftsman restaurant last night, Craftsman 64, I think it's called, and had a cocktail party with a bunch of women who were interested in going on our cruise, and had a really, really good time. So we're really excited about the cruise, and so everybody look at that. Duff, you got something up coming up?
I have nothing coming up.
I do
have something. I mean,
I have something coming up for Duff.
Moving back.
There you go. Okay.
So yes, and so because I am a sexologist, and that's what I do, but I also do a lot of hypnosis, so regression hypnosis. So I'm moving back over to the center.
Because we kicked Billy out.
Yeah.
He's moving home.
So
anyway,
starting next week, and if you need to get in touch with me, you can reach me at 602-910-0215.
Very good, very good. So where are we at with time, Billy? We've got 2 minutes to say goodnight to Bart and to thank him once again for coming. Honestly, Bart, I appreciate it so much, because you know you're our first male guest. You opened up our 4-week segment on grief, and your grief has been, again, a little unique. You know, like you've been special.
Well, I was very blessed, and it's a great marriage. And, I could feel her around it.
You can feel her.
Yeah. And thanks for having me. This is wonderful.
Yeah. Very good. Very good.
And Bijou is always glad to see you. So.
Oh,
yeah, we had Bijou here tonight. So anyway, I guess that's it for us tonight. So please tune in next week to meet Chad Villaborghi, and he will talk to us about the loss of his 13-year-old son. And get ready with your questions if you have any for Chad, and we'll look forward to seeing you next week. Have a good night.